Ladies and gentlemen, if you just want to come underneath the canopy.
No, we're not starting until 1:30. Do you want to do Korea first, Rabbi, or no? Okay. Does everybody have a service folder? Yeah. Bill, can we get more service folders for everyone? We'll pass, he's going to pass it out. I got you covered.
Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, we're going to begin the funeral services of Mrs. Shirley T. Shechtman. Rabbi Victor Weisberg will be officiating. For those of you who are here, I ask you to be sure your cell phones have been turned off. And for the family, you'd be pleased to know there are over 100 screens right now that are watching. So for those of you who are on live stream, the family appreciates your attendance here via the internet. This time we're going to begin the sacred funeral ceremony of Mrs. Shechtman. Rabbi Weisberg just completed the ceremony of Priya, the tearing of the ribbon.
Praise be thou, O Lord our God, ruler of the world, who forms us in his image, who nourishes and sustains us in his goodness, who causes us to die in accordance with his law, and who has implanted within us eternal life. Blessed art thou, O Lord, judge of truth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this little packet of earth This little sacket of earth is from the Har HaZeitim, the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. And that's the mountain directly east of the Temple Mount. And it's the site of the oldest and the largest Jewish cemetery in the world, because according to rabbinic tradition, those who are buried either on the mount or from the mount will rise first when the Mashiach comes. And so we want to afford that merit to as many as possible. Okay. Go ahead on the thing for me. Just a little bit, yeah. I don't like to go. Adam Yesodo Afar V'Sofa Afar. Adam Me'afar Yakum Ul-Afar Tashuv. Man's beginning is dust, and his end is dust, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns unto God who gave it. May her blessed spirit ever dwell among us as an inspiration and fond recall. Amen. The reason for my walking stick. Adonai ma'adam vateda'ehu, ben enosh vatchashvehu. Adam lahevel dama, yamav ketzel over, baboker yatzitz v'chalaf, ula'erev yamoleel v'yavesh. Tashev enosh ad dakav hatomer shuvu b'nei adam, lu chachmu yaskilu zot, yavinu la'achritam. Ki lo b'moto yikach hakol, v'lo yered acharav kavodo. Shmar tam u're'ei yashar, ki acharit le'ish shalom. Podeh Adonai nefesh avadav, v'lo yeshmu kol hachosim bo. The psalmist asks a question, O Lord, what is man that thou takest knowledge of him, or the Son of Man that thou makest account of him? Our life in the view of the eons of the world is so brief. And he answers, man is like unto a breath. His days are as a shadow that passeth away. In the morning he flourisheth and groweth up, and in the evening he is cut down and withereth. Thou turnest man to contrition, and sayest, Return, ye children of men. O that they were wise, and would consider their latter end. For when man dieth, he shall carry nothing away, but his glory shall not descend after him. Now, if you notice, I'm using thou and dieth and things. That's the King James edition of the Bible. And the people who translated the Bible under King James spoke about the glory, okay? Glory. Now that word in Hebrew, I think they misappropriated it, but the word in Hebrew is kavod. And the first time we meet the Hebrew word kavod is when Moshe Rabbeinu goes up the mountain a second time after he smashed the tablets, and God asks him to go up the mountain again. And he is very contrite because he feels, after seeing what took place around the golden calf, that he misplaced the trust in these recently manumitted slaves because they fell back into idolatrous ways a la Egypt. And they sort of scorned any idea that Moses was going to propose about the reality of God. And so in the 33rd chapter of Exodus and the 34th chapter, there's this magnificent dialogue between Moses and God. I'd like for you to imagine this dialogue between this human being and this ethereal presence. And God says, I want you to go up the mountain again. He says, I don't want to go up the mountain again. I want you to carve 2 tablets just as the first. I really failed you. Why don't you find somebody else? Finally, God says, you're going to do it. So Moses says, let me see thy face. Who am I really dealing with? And God says, no man can see my face and live. I will cause all my glory, that's the wrong translation, my kavod to pass before thee. And if you say the Kedusha, Mr. Jacobson has a little beard because he's been saying Kaddish for his own mother. You say the prayers on Shabbat during the day. It's called Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melo Chol Haaretz Kavodo. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his kavod, which the rabbis, full of his glory, full of his presence, filled with his essence, his personality, however you want to say it. And that's what God revealed unto Moses and is placed on the second tablets, not the 10 Commandments, but a second tablets with these words: Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet, Notzer Chesed la'alafim, Nosei Avon v'Fesha v'Chata'ah. This is the Weisberg translation. Adonai, God is. God is ever present. God is a postulate that we instill within our own lives to feel the presence of transcendence, to feel the presence of something higher than self that guides us, inspires us, and impels us. God is mighty. God is powerful. And any one of us who's ever been empowered in some way or another, encouraged in some way or another, should understand that we have been dowered with a special gift that is beyond human flesh. It's instilled within us in a spiritual way that lifts us up even when we're filled with self-doubt. God is merciful. God is kindly. God is patient. God is loyal. God is true. God is just. God forgives iniquity, transgression, and sin, and grants pardon. And those qualities that I've just enumerated are qualities that you and I can understand if we're the least bit cultured and less boorish than our flesh itself. We have been touched by people who have forgiven us in our own peccadillos. We've been touched by people who've shown their trust for us even when we have this doubt about ourselves. We have been sustained by people who believe in us and have dealt with us with infinite kindness and forgiveness and understanding. And we should understand that those qualities have brought out something ineffable in them and have brought out something beautiful and majestic in ourselves. We have embodied within us those gifts from others that talk to us and reflect upon us in our godliness. Mark the perfect man, and behold the upright, for the end of that man shall be peace. The Lord redeemeth the souls of his servants, and none of them that trust in him shall be forsaken. Amen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you have this beautiful little folder with Shirley's wonderful picture on it, if you open it to the inside cover, you'll see the 23rd Psalm. And we call it the Psalm of David because it encapsulates David's life. He was a devil-may-care roue at certain times. That's how he got to Bathsheba. But there were other times when David faced tremendous challenges, mano a mano, just one by one. And if you chance to go to Israel, there's a valley. It's called the Emek HaElah. The translation is the valley of the pistachio tree. And it's an S-shaped valley. And if you stand in a certain place, you can see the Mediterranean where the Philistines were, and you can see the Judean hills where the rest of our tribe was. And David met Goliath in that present place, one by one. And Goliath was 7 feet tall, and it took 2 men to hold his shield. And David was a little fellow, and he was armed only with 5 little pebbles from the brook and a slingshot. And a presence of God in his soul that armed him with a sense of fearlessness because he had a mission to save the Jewish people. Let's recite this prayer because even when we're sometimes alone, we're never alone. God is present ever. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou hast prepared a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've asked the following to come forward one at a time. Deborah, Farah, Joey, Steve, Gail, and Alan. So, Debbie, you'll come forward now, and when Debbie's finished, follow, okay?
Mom, to my special mom, there are no words to express my adoration and love for you. I am truly grateful for all we have been to each other throughout these many, many, many years. You will always be my rock and special angel forever and beyond. I love you with all my heart.
I have to thank and acknowledge a few people before I begin. Rabbi Weisberg, you've been with our family for our happiest and saddest moments, and it means a lot to have you here with us today. Chicago Jewish Funerals, thank you for making this deeply sad time in our lives more manageable, for your kindness and help to our family in today's preparations. And Uncle Alan, I want to give you special acknowledgement. There wasn't a more devoted son than you. You were the apple of Nani's eye. It's no secret the lengths that you went through to ensure she could continue living her life the way she wanted to. And I also want to thank everyone who's reached out to our family. Over the past few days, we've been hearing from the countless amounts of people the most touching messages about my grandmother and the indelible mark she left on their lives. Please keep sharing your stories with us. We find comfort in them. And as long as we collectively continue to keep those memories alive, she too will stay with us. It feels very heavy to stand here. It's not lost on me that while Joey and me and Phil and Gina and Alexa and Jeremy got to call her our Nani, and I say that with distinction, as she was not just a grandma. She was also thought of as a second mother, aunt, confidant, best friend, sister to so many people here and joining us virtually today. The rabbi taught us the term Hidur Mitzvah, which as I interpret it means to make every moment sacred and beautiful. And I firmly believe that my grandmother fully embodied this concept. And that is the reason why, whether you knew her for 30 minutes or 30 years, you were forever touched by her. And that is the reason our collective world is a little darker today. My grandma certainly experienced her fair share of loss in life. Her husband, her daughter, her parents, and many other family members for whom she cared in her home until their final breaths. When referring to their memory, she always spoke from strength. I never saw her get choked up or teary-eyed, except for when she would tell me her stories of her close relationship with her grandma Dora. She called her grandma the love of her life, her greatest love, and at 96, the mention of her grandma Dora would still make her weepy. Well, my Nani was the love of my life. My heart is broken. And for the rest of my life, my happiness will be a little less without her here to share in it. Of course, when my mom died, Nani's presence in my life, as my only pure maternal connection, became ever more important. However, our love affair didn't start there. She was my best friend my entire life. When I was little, must have been in 3rd grade, we had an assignment for class where we had to write an essay about our hero. For me, it was an easy choice. It was Nani. I spent every Friday night at her house for Shabbat. She spoiled me with clothes and back-to-school shopping trips. She took me to the theater. She golfed with me. And in recent years, she happily rode around in the cart. We did crossword puzzles together with her yellow mechanical pencils. We played cards for hours upon hours. In recent months, she started showing some signs of cognitive decline and couldn't recall all the rules for our sacred game, Spite and Malice. While initially Joey and I were extremely concerned, I'm still convinced she was just hustling us. All I can tell you is that she dominated every single game, and I think I only managed to win once or twice in the past year that we played. Nani never yelled at me, though I'm sure at times I deserved to be yelled at, and she always defended me to my mother. My grandmother wasn't a touchy-feely person. We often joked about the fact that she'd never gotten a pedicure and hated getting massages. Yet with Joey and me, she was so nurturing and affectionate, always holding our hands or patting our head. Going back to my hero essay, I think my mom, who sacrificed so much for me my entire life, was a little hurt that she hadn't been my obvious choice. But the truth is that my grandma was my hero, and she also was for so many other people. There was no better wing woman than my grandma. In college, Nani would regularly come downtown for one of our planned sleepovers. She would take my friends to dinner. People would remark to us, "Wow, that's so nice what you're doing for your grandma. That's so sweet that you're letting her come out to dinner with you." But in fact, it couldn't be more opposite. It was she who was doing the mitzvah of wanting to spend her time with us. While she sometimes couldn't relate to our dinner conversation about boys or inside jokes, or whether modern times meant less modest fashion choices for me and my friends that perhaps she grew up with, she took an active, genuine interest in our lives, in our heartbreaks, and in our gossip, although I never heard her mutter one negative thing about someone else. She never judged, never scoffed. She listened and contributed to the conversation and always had sage advice, often with a positive undertone. After dinner, we'd go to a bar or dancing, and of course we drew a crowd and interest wherever we went. Once she decided she'd had enough fun for the night, she allowed us to go home and diligently followed her bedtime routine, no matter what hour of the early morning it was. She brushed her teeth, lotioned her face, neatly folded her clothes, put on a set of her silk pajamas, set her slippers neatly beside her bed, and went to sleep. Another thing that Nani and I loved to do together was go to the movies, or motion pictures, as she liked to call them. "Let's go see a show," she would say. We often picked movies that were based on true stories. The last movie we saw together was On the Basis of Sex, the story of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's early life. We sat side by side holding hands. While Ruth was a legend on the screen before us, I couldn't help but look over at my Nani and think how similar they were, and that I had my own real-life legend sitting next to me. Like Ruth's, Nani's love story was one for the ages. While I never got to meet my grandfather Joe, their love story was straight out of a fairy tale. They met in South Haven when Nani was 12 and he 13. They went to rival high schools but were best friends. Nani used to say she took my grandfather through all of his love affairs in high school, and when it came time to his senior prom, he asked her to be his date. The following year, when it was her time for her senior prom, she was asked by the captain of the basketball team. Apparently, my grandfather became jealous, and she always told me, from then on, the dynamic of the relationship changed and we never looked back. Together, they cultivated friendships that have transcended multiple generations. And when those friends passed on, Nani became a living symbol to their memory for so many of their children, whom she also befriended and let become a regular part of her life. Like Ruth, Nani also overcame tragic loss. However, self-pity wasn't a word that existed in her vocabulary. People loved to bring up how remarkable it was that she dusted herself off after my grandfather died, but I don't think she saw it that way. It wasn't remarkable, it was just who she is and how she stayed positive in the face of adversity. What made it special is that many people face far fewer tragedies in their lives and still refuse to find things to be happy about. Like Ruth, my grandmother was a pioneer of her time. She never compared herself to others. In fact, I'm sure there were many women who simply didn't like her because she was single and cared about her career and made her own money and had no desire to remarry. Her independence and confidence was enviable. Things that seemed so hard for others were effortless and no big deal to her. Also, like Ruth, She was fully devoted to her profession. Teaching was her life's passion. She had a lifelong connection to Hibbard School, attending there as a girl. Sorry. Oh. We talked this past weekend about the thousands of students whose lives were impacted by her. I had a long-standing tradition of going to school with my grandmother each year since CPS had a longer school year than we did, and I would sleep at her house the night before. We would share a bed. I would fall asleep and she would continue reading until 2 or 3 in the morning. She'd get up without an alarm clock at 5:30, put herself together, make her breakfast, pack her brown lunch, and then wake me up. She must have been in her 80s, and I don't even know how she did it. I looked forward to those days that I got to go to school with her each year. I was so proud to watch her teach. She was so natural and oozed confidence in everything she did, and it was evident that this was her true calling in life. Nani's commitment to her students was steadfast. For holidays, we often traveled together as the Super Six: Shirley, Debbie, Joey, Alan, me, and my mom. A few times I vividly recall my mom and Nani fighting about the fact that my grandmother refused to take a single day off of school so that we could leave a day or two early to save a little on travel expenses or make it more convenient for Joey and my school breaks, since sometimes CPS would be on a different schedule. But that was my Nani. She showed up for those kids every single day with an unwavering sense of obligation. Her students not only had special needs developmentally, but she understood that they required special treatment emotionally, as many of them had immigrant parents who maybe didn't speak English or understand American customs, or who worked multiple jobs and weren't able to provide a disciplined environment at home. For them, Nani's classroom was a safe, secure environment. In return for her outstanding teaching, she was featured by the Sun-Times, the Tribune, on TV programs. She was the chosen subject of several students for their thesis projects, and they would regularly come from nearby universities to her classroom to observe her and interview her. Like Ruth, Nani also never let age get in the way of her activities or define what she was supposed to be interested in doing. She stole the show wherever she went. And it wasn't because she was the prettiest in the room, although she was beautiful. And it wasn't because she was the wealthiest in the room, though we were rich in other ways. And it wasn't because she sought the attention out. It was given to her anyway. Maybe it was her age that initially made people take note of her presence, but what made her stand out was that she was full of life and energy and a passion for living with Hidur Mitzvot. She squeezed every ounce of juice out of every moment. My grandmother loved people, so much in fact that we diagnosed her as having FOMO, fear of missing out, because there was never a party or a gathering or event that she would dare to miss. A few years back, when Nani broke her femur, she had to stay at a rehab facility for weeks. Well, she quickly became the favorite of all the patients. She moved her bridge matches to the rehab facility and often defied visitation hours. When she left, the nurses remarked, "Well, we're not sure who that lady was, but we've never seen someone with more visitors." At weddings, we would all draw straws for who was going to babysit Nani on the dance floor. We had to take turns tapping each other out because we were all exhausted, and my grandmother refused to leave the dance floor as long as the band was playing. The first night I introduced Nani to my husband Phil, we went out to dinner and must have finished too early because she insisted that we take her to the Drake Hotel to listen to live music. We sat and had a few drinks. She had chocolate martini because at that point she had already had her Cosmo at dinner. And it wasn't long before she started impatiently tapping her foot on the ground. We all know what happened next. I looked at Phil, who at the time didn't know what he was in for, and said, "You know she's not letting us leave here till you ask her to dance." Well, he finally did ask her, and afterwards she let me know that I could continue seeing him. Music was always a big part of our lives. Since I was little, I remember sitting on the stairs at her house listening to Uncle Alan play the pianos while she sang songs from the Great American Songbook. We all got to witness her beautiful soprano voice at the Shirley Show in recent years, and once again she reminded us how to live a life full of Hidur Mitzvah and how to make every moment patient. Like Ruth, Nani led a proud Jewish life. She valued tradition and insisted we were together for every Shabbat. And because of that, Nani became a frequent and avid restaurateur. And while she was the favored diner at every establishment. It was not for the raving food critiques she left. In fact, she was indifferent to the quality of the food. As long as the coffee was hot, 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 the Cosmos were strong, the bread was served with olive oil, and the sauces were on the side. As long as the chicken lacked flavor, the salmon was well done, the pizza had no cheese, the salad was extra chopped, the table was ideally located, and the dessert menu boasted something with chocolate. She was a very easily satisfied customer. However, Nani was very consistent, a very generous tipper, and a frequent patron of the establishment she chose to favor, so it didn't take long for her to work her way onto the top of any wait list or into the hearts of any restaurant owner. I looked forward to our Friday night dinners for Shabbat because I knew we would always be treated like royalty wherever we went because we were guests at Nani's table. Like Ruth, my grandma was also a fashion icon. She had an enviable collection of colorful suits and sequin jackets. She was always impeccably dressed and accessorized. Her hair was perfectly set, her nails perfectly trimmed with only clear polish. The only complaint I ever can hear her remembering in my whole life was about modern teachers and the way they dressed. She would say, "Ugh, these teachers. They look like slobs. They take no pride in how they dress and come to school. Don't they know these children are watching and learning from them?" Anyway, I cannot think of a person who lived a better, fuller, or more exemplary life. Every year during Yom Kippur, I attend Yitzker, the memorial service for my mom. There is a prayer in the service that we say that always brings me comfort. It goes, "As the sun is rising and as it goes down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and the chill of the winter, we remember them. In the opening of the buds and the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the skies, in the warmth of the summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have joy that we crave to share, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. For as long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us, and we remember them." Well, I don't want to diminish the sanctity of this prayer, and I hope you remember Nani during all of those times. But I also have a few times that I ask you think of her. When you're 60 seconds into your plank at the gym and decide to hold out for an extra 30 seconds, please remember her. When you had great service at a restaurant and decide to tip the waiter 30% instead of 20, please remember her. When there's an important sports match on TV and you root for the underdog, please remember her. When you're at a bar with live music and decide to get up to dance, please remember her. And when you see a Cosmopolitan listed on the cocktail menu, please remember her and order one. When you refuse to sit on a public toilet seat, no matter how many layers of toilet paper it's covered in, please remember her. When you get older and you just don't understand technology, please remember her. When you put in extra effort to get ready in the morning, please remember her. When you're walking in the drugstore and pass the Vita Bath in the soap aisle and the red lipstick in the cosmetics aisle, please remember her. When you're out to eat and the bus person sets the waters on the table, please remember her. She hated water. When you're having company over and place no limits on who is welcome to come, please remember her. And when you open a random drawer and see a deck of playing cards, please remember her. I've dreaded this day for as long as I can remember. And this scenario that we currently find ourselves in is not one that I could have ever imagined. To add to the devastation I'm feeling about losing my most treasured relationship, I'm also equal parts sad that we're not able to give her the send-off that she deserves. But I'm trying to hold on to the blessings because I know she would want me to. Looking back on our relationship, I can honestly say I have no regrets. She made sure that we had Hidur Mitzvah at every minute and moment that we shared. I never doubted her love and adoration for me, and she never doubted my respect and admiration for her. I couldn't be more proud and honored to be her granddaughter. I choose to see the blessing that she had decades of history with my dad's family, almost a decade of history with Phil, and that his family got to share so many sacred memories with her. I choose to see the blessing that I could give her the gift of Ferris, and that as I will shape and influence his life, he got to meet the person most responsible for shaping and influencing mine. I choose to see the blessing that she didn't have to suffer, and that her long-awaited reunion with so many of her loved ones is now here. I love you, Nani, and I didn't write an ending for this because it's really hard to say goodbye, but I hope you're resting in peace. I'll love you forever.
Now I know you're all sitting at home thinking to yourself, I feel bad for him, he's got to follow that. But Nani was always positive, so I'm feeling good about this. I got it. My name is Joey, and I am Shirley's proud grandson. I am the quiet one in the family, and if you know our family, you might be thinking to yourself, that's not that difficult of a task. But if you know me, yes, I really am quiet. So it takes a special person for me to want to speak in front of an audience, and especially being streamed to people I might not even know. My Nani was that special of a person, and I'm honored to be able to stand up here and brag about her to you. I want to represent all of you who looked up to Nani like she was your own grandma, and share the lessons she taught me that I will cherish, practice, and teach for as long as I am able to. First of all, before I get into Nani's lessons, I want to talk a little bit more about our history together. I was lucky enough to be raised in Nani's house. She was my roommate for over 20 years, and yes, I said 20. Well, it was actually closer to 25, but that just shows you how good of a roommate Nani was. That also shows you how caring Nani was. And that is lesson number 1, care for others. Nani would do anything to help other people. She was the one everyone went to for advice, life lessons, and motivation. Nani would never turn anyone away, no matter what the circumstance was. If someone was hungry, Nani would feed them. And we're not talking about going to McDonald's. They would get treated to the best meal they ever had, but of course, cooked by someone else, and not served by someone named Nani. If they needed shelter, Nani would always offer our home. After experiencing a night with the Shechtmans and Weitzmans, not everybody came back for the second night, but the offer was always there. Anything you asked of Nani, she would do her best to accommodate you, except if you wanted her to eat cheese. My favorite thing to do with Nani was go out to eat with her. We liked it for 2 different reasons. I liked it for the food, and Nani liked it for every other reason. When you walked into a restaurant with Nani, you felt like a celebrity. You would never wait for a table. You would always be seated in the prime real estate, because Nani would never settle for anything else. If you dared try to sit Nani by a door where there might be a draft from the outside, or by a table that looked cramped, you would never make that mistake again. When Nani walked into a restaurant, you could see the servers trying to eye where she would be seated because they all wanted to take care of Shirley. And that takes us to lesson number 2. Tip well and always be generous. Nani was a fantastic tipper, and not only is this a huge loss to our family, but it's a huge loss of income to every server in the North Shore and South Haven, Michigan. Nani appreciated her servers, and if someone worked hard and did their job correctly, Nani would really take care of them. Even the servers that didn't do too well, Nani would still show sympathy and give them a generous tip. The way Nani threw her money around at others, you would have thought she was a doctor or lawyer. This is still one lesson I'm trying to grasp, and one day I'll get it, Nani. Lesson 3, is embrace and follow the rules of traditions. Nani would always follow the rules and traditions. She was always strict in her way to make sure you knew where your obligation should stand. You would always abide by her wishing because you did not want to disappoint her. Because I'm not that social of a person, there were many times I did not want to participate in family events, functions, or religious holidays that were happening. Let's just say I never missed anything. All Nani had to do was raise her voice and give me that look of disappointment, and all of a sudden I was there giving my best effort and leading the crowd. I'm grateful to Nani for this lesson, and even though it was not my favorite lesson, it is a very important one. Lesson number 4 is make sure you have friends and keep them close. Nani loved my friends. She would always brag and say I had the best group of friends, which I think I do. This brings back fun memories with my friends and Nani. Since I grew up in Nani's house, so did my friends. Nani always wanted everything to happen at our house. It did not matter how many friends I wanted. They were all invited. Nani treated my friends like they were her own grandchildren. She would always welcome them with open arms. She would play cards with us, and of course feed them the way Nani liked to feed people. High school and college kids never ate so well. She would also keep her strict rules and make sure we were behaving like we should. One time Nani did catch us having some beverages when we were not supposed to be. So of course she did the Nani thing. She scalded everybody and kicked us all out. The wonderful thing was, in a couple of years when we were all of age, Nani would be the first one at the bar buying us rounds. Everyone here and watching in the streaming world was a friend of Nani's. Nani loved all of her friends and enjoyed every minute of the relationship she had with you. The great thing about Nani is she was everyone's best friend. I'm sure you all had a very special relationship with her, and one day when the world is normal again, I would love to hear about them. Nani was always huge on communication, which is lesson number 5. Nani made sure to teach me to always look at someone in the eyes when talking to them, to always listen and pay attention, to not get distracted and give that person your full, undivided attention. This is a lesson that our world is losing with technology. I attempt to practice this lesson myself, and I feel it's important to try and make phone calls instead of texts and emails if possible. Now, not asking everybody to call me after this speech, just make sure we keep things proper. To Nani, proper is live interaction. Since we're not able to do that right now, please call your loved ones. When you saw Nani, she was always dressed to the T and looked fantastic. This takes us to lesson number 6, which is dress presentable. In other words, don't dress like a schlub. One of Nani's pet peeves was she could not understand how the younger teachers presented themselves at school. I will not go into details of exact words because I do not want to offend anyone. Let's just leave it as if you were going in to be in a public situation. Think twice of what you're wearing, and is that how you like to present yourself? As much as I love wearing sweatpants and sleeveless shirts, I always think twice before I attempt to step in public with those on. Lesson number 7 is family comes first. Nani was the glue to our family. We're all very different, but Nani was able to bring us all together to be the strong unit we are. Family was everything to Nani, and we would always come first to Nani. No matter what Nani was dealing with, she would set a priority to make sure the family was taken care of. Our family will stay strong and together. We have the best leader, and we will continue to stick together and love each other. We have the best family, and we can all thank Nani because through all of her hard work and dedication, she taught us to be the best. This day, like Farah, is one of the most difficult days I've had to face in my lifetime. I have to say goodbye to my best friend. And this takes us to the final lesson I would like to share with you. Lesson number 8. Find the bright side in every situation and never go negative. Nani was amazing. She was dealt a lot of adversity in her life, and she plowed right through every obstacle that was thrown her way. I was only able to experience 37 years of this. But in those 37 years, nothing kept Nani down. No matter what she was going through, or the family was going through, she would never go negative. She would always find some sort of positive out of the situation, even if no one else could see it. This is a lesson we all need to practice today. Even though I am crying, and I will continue to cry, I know my family is crying, and I'm sure many of you are crying. Nani would all want us to find the positive out of this situation. We were all blessed to spend many years with this amazing woman. She was a true leader. She inspired us, she taught us, and most importantly, she loved us with every ounce of energy she had, which is a lot of energy. A lot of energy. A lot of energy. I just want to thank you, Nani, for being you and teaching me so many lessons. I know Nani is watching down on us with her family and friends up there. I'm sure they're all sitting at some sort of restaurant, as I love to do with her. And for one last time, I would like to order one last meal for my Nani. Server in the sky. Nani would like to start off with a Cosmopolitan filled to the top. Please make sure you bring out olive oil for her bread. She would like her soup hot, hot, hot. And her salad, she wants balsamic dressing on the side. If you serve her chicken or fish, please make sure it's dry with no flavor. Make sure she has broccoli on her side dish. And please don't even think about bringing cheese anywhere near the table. When she is finished with her Cosmo, please bring her her coffee. Fill that to the very top also. Make sure that is hot, hot, hot. She doesn't want any cream or sugar. Make sure she knows it's coming black. For dessert, she would like the chocolate cake. If it is served with ice cream, please put that on the side for her guests, which was my favorite part of going out to eat with Nani. I would always get the ice cream. Please make sure you do your job well, and you will not regret it when you get your tip. Nani, I love you so much, and I hope you enjoy your meal.
Steve?
I'm Steve Wright, and I'm Alan's other half. I have the honor to read a letter from another of Shirley's many surrogate daughters. Shirley adopted Dion Breer DeLille, her parents, her 3 sisters, and eventually their spouses, children, and now grandchildren. This is an example of how Shirley's sphere of family and friendship always grew. Alan met Dion in high school when she was visiting in Evanston from her home in Paris. Their friendship lasts to this day. But this is not about Alan and Dion's friendship. This is about Dion and Shirley. Many of you know, in later years, Shirley traveled often to Europe. Some of those trips were to be with Dion and her husband, Henry. You might recall that last year, Shirley attended their son's wedding in London, and then they treated Shirley to a first-class trip to their home in Antibes on the Riviera. I give you the words from Dion. I first met Shirley when I was 16, and I immediately fell in love. She was the most vibrant, fun, welcoming, embracing, and genuine woman that I ever met. 46 years later, she still holds this place in my heart. She is still the most amazing woman that I have ever met. She took me in, a shy French teenager that she had never met, and she treated me as if I were her daughter too. The days I spent at the Shechtman house back in the 1970s were among the happiest of my youth. Even though they were very limited, they played an essential role in shaping who I have become. Shirley inspired me, as I believe she inspired many, many people in her life. Her huge smile is what drew you in at first, but then you noticed the twinkle in her eyes, that spark of real life that never dimmed until the end. Finally, you were greeted by her inimitable voice, her warmth, and her laughter. Her energy seemed boundless, her zest for life inspiring, her love of people all-encompassing. It expressed itself, among other things, in her selfless hospitality. She hosted me and my whole family, all 6 of us, in her cottage in South Haven. She fed us all and entertained us all, and then we never saw her work. That's because she would get up before anyone else to do what had to be done to feed my little tribe so that we would not have to lift a finger. But the most amazing feat of all was how she tamed my mother. My mother could be a warm, fun, and witty person if she felt comfortable. But she never felt comfortable anywhere else than on her own turf. If she felt uncomfortable, she could be quite a difficult and demanding mother to me and my sisters. But the minute Shirley met my mother, she charmed her forever, and thus created a beautiful and loving friendship which lasted for the rest of their lives. Shirley had to face some real tragedies in her life, losing her husband whom she adored while the children were still young, and then losing her daughter Felice to cancer. And yet she never asked for pity. She carried on living with tremendous courage, with that beautiful smile on her face, with determination and energy, never losing that zest for life. That zest for life that categorized her. That's why she was always at our reunions and our parties. Shirley was the life of the party. She was 96, but she looked timeless. She always dressed beautifully, color coordination always present. Her hair was always well coiffed, and her makeup was applied perfectly. Let's not forget about her bright lipstick, and that was never overdone. She never gave in to old age. She kept true to her values and principles all her life. This showed in the presentation of herself. She looked after herself when she was younger, and she was not going to stop because the years were piling on. She stayed young at heart and young physically because she kept going, never taking the elevator in all those years that she taught in her school, exercising almost every day, thanks to Alan's coaxing, dancing, taking singing lessons, and in short, living. That's the best lesson that we can learn from Shirley's life. Live. Live as healthily, as enthusiastically, as energetically, as lovingly, as gratefully, and as honorably as she did. And your life will have true meaning. Shirley, you inspired me, and I aspire to be like you. Thank you. You will forever live in my heart. Dion.
I am blessed to be a member of this family. My Aunt Shirley was a towering figure at a whopping 5 feet 5 inches, and then 5 feet 3 inches, and then maybe a little less than 5 feet. But at no time was her personal integrity diminished, or her sometimes irritating insistence on honesty, or her immediate negative response to the very first restaurant suggestion of the evening, or her ability to accept everyone that wandered into her circle. If the restaurant industry thinks they are in trouble now, wait until they find out Shirley will no longer be there. Saying no seasoning, no sauce, and of course no cheese. My Aunt Shirley was a most memorable matriarch of a small and yet very bonded family. I identified her as my mother role model at a very young age. She referred to me as her oldest daughter, and I loved when she did that. She held us all together with love and every once in a while a little coercion. Having everyone for the holidays was never a problem. A birthday, a holiday, a life event was always acknowledged. I looked forward to her singing happy birthday to me, or opening the Valentine card she would send to me with a personal note. And in return, I promised never to sing to her. My Aunt Shirley epitomized personal strength, acceptance of others, generosity of spirit and of herself in every way. She loved unconditionally. She leaves a legacy which will live for many generations to come. And I will continue to strive to be the person she was.
Gail is my backup because it's like carrying a Valium. If you know it's there, you don't need it. So I'm hoping by knowing she's there to fill in, should I get a little emotional, I'll be okay. Wow, what acts to follow, and what beautiful thoughts about my mother. Many of them I'm going to have to excise so as not to be redundant. Thank you very much. And I'm so proud of everyone. You know, I always brag about my nieces and nephews, and I think you can see why. Rabbi Weisberg, thank you for supporting us for over 60 years. Okay. I used to kid at the Shirley shows that my mother gave me so much material it was easy to be funny. It's still true. My mother's given me so much material to work with, and I'm overwhelmed by it all. I want to get it right this time because there will be no Shirley Show 4. And it's all good because my mother was all good. She was pure, unadulterated Shirley. She knew who she was, and if someone didn't know her, they would soon know who Shirley Shechtman was. I could just say 2 things and stop there. Think positively and love life. I know I said I could stop here, but you know me, give me a microphone, and I can't stop. No one thought more optimistically or loved life more fully than my mother. Are you seeing a consistent picture here? I'm so grateful that when it was time to let go, she was able to do so very peacefully and quietly, very uncharacteristic of her. I always had visions of her holding the curtains, kicking and screaming as we tried to get her to a waiting car or something. I first stood about where I am standing right now on my 7th birthday. The date was April 13th, 1964. My father was laid to rest right here on that day. Many well-meaning but misguided people told this frightened, bewildered little boy, "Be brave, because now you are the man of the family. You have to protect your mother." Never tell that to an impressionable little boy, because he might take it to heart, which is what I did. On that day, my childhood ended, and my concern became the well-being and happiness of my mother, which I thought was unfairly taken from her. I felt sorry for her. If she had known, she would have been very angry with me. If only I knew then what I learned over the years, I could have saved myself so much angst and guilt, not to mention the money I spent on therapy and medication. Shortly after my father died, I remember overhearing my mother scolding someone. Do not ever feel sorry for my children. I do not want that kind of negativity in my house. And I was thinking, oh, come on, Ma. If someone wants to feel sorry for me, I'm good with it. Besides, her message of positivity was undermined daily by someone who I loved fiercely and who was with us almost every day. Grandma Fanny brought enough negativity into our home for an army, and yet I've never stopped missing her since the day she died. Steve says Grandma never did die. She just moved into my body. My mother never felt sorry for herself and would have been distraught if she had known I felt sorry for her and that I worried about her all the time. Most of all, I feared and dreaded the day when she would join my father. Imagine worrying about something that you feared was imminent but did not happen for 56 years. And now, am I now ready for life without my mother? If I heed the lessons that she taught me through word and deed, then of course I am. Well, maybe I am. Well, on a good day. Anyhow, although she faced adversity, my mother would tell you she led a charmed life. That's how she saw things. She started life, Shirley Pearl Tint, in 1924 in the Albany Park neighborhood of Chicago. Was an only child, but never lonely because she was surrounded by a loving, boisterous, extended family and friends. And family is a recurring motif in her life. Her parents lived comfortably, and the beach was at the end of her street before Lakeshore Drive crept north. Life was good. And when the Great Depression came and her father lost his jobs in banking, my mother and grandparents had to move in with my great-grandparents, who owned a large building in Albany Park. They were joined by other cousins whose parents struggled. So to my mother, life was still good in the Great Depression, even better because she now lived with a grandmother whom she adored. As you know, she went to Hibbert School, where her aunt was the assistant principal as well as a teacher for 44 years. And while the lobby of Hibbert School is now named Shirley T. Shechtman Place, the auditorium is named for my Aunt Tilly K. Goldberg. My mother was a member of the National Honor Society. She loved to swim, was a lifeguard, and participated in water ballet. She sang in a choir, and she loved to dance. Like many Jewish families from the cities around the Great Lakes, my mother's family started visiting South Haven, Michigan in 1926. Hello, South Haven. It made for idyllic summers with her cousins and school friends and new friends from other Chicago neighborhoods. She loved the beach, and she loved to dance, winning dance contests with her cousin Ivan at the Jewish dance hall. Farah already told you the story of how she met my father and the whole idea of the prom. As my mother told it, as Farah alluded to, the nature of their friendship changed after my father realized that he was jealous that he didn't get to take Shirley to the prom. It was 1942. My mother began to attend Chicago Teachers College, and my father went off to fight World War II and some of the heaviest fighting in Europe, including the Battle of the Bulge. They married when he was on leave on August 20th, 1944. After the war, my dad returned home and began college at DePaul University on the GI Bill. My mom began her teaching career at Hibbert School. She taught PE and health to 8th graders. She transferred to a nearby school for the next 4 years. During this time, my parents lived with my grandparents and great-grandparents. And again, life was good. I'm not sure if my dad liked the arrangement, but my mother loved it. When he graduated college in 1949, my parents were ready to start a family and get a place of their own. My mother then left full-time teaching and taught part-time as a substitute teacher, but only at Hibbert School. Debbie was born in 1950 and Felice arrived in 52. Then it was off to a larger apartment as my dad's career took off, and I came along in 1957. In my memory, those first 6 years of my life in that large apartment were a very happy time for our family. My parents were very involved in our lives. They never went on a vacation without us. My dad always took our birthdays off from work and led the festivities as my mother looked on with happiness. My parents had a large circle of friends, and we were a close family. My mother was the only member of both sides of her family who got along with everyone. Our place was a fun place to be, whether in Chicago or South Haven. My father bought a speedboat and a little sailboat. Since my mother was prone to motion sickness, I assume in the interest of peace, my dad let her have her way most of the time, so she allowed him this indulgence. We took our first family trip in a jet in 1962 with our dear friends, the Spiewaks, to Miami Beach, Florida, of course. The whole trip revolved around our 3 kids and the 4 Spiewak children. My parents' close friends began to move to homes in the suburbs, and my parents decided to make the leap. They settled on a house that my sisters instantly declared too small. Some of my parents' friends said the same thing, but my parents were never out to impress anyone with material things. That is something my mother tried to instill in us too, but it doesn't always take. My mother once told me that when she and my dad walked into that house on Springfield for the first time, they knew they were home. We moved there in November of 1963. My parents couldn't wait to throw their first party, and in December they gave my cousin Gail a wedding shower for her first wedding. It was a lovely cocktail party. My mother loved to take people on a tour of their house. You would have thought that we had moved into Versailles. 5 months later, at the age of 40, my father died in his sleep of an aneurysm. My mother said that my father had the satisfaction of knowing he had us safely in our home and that she would never live anywhere else. And if you knew my mother, you know she didn't like change, and she didn't like to change her mind. She could be very, very stubborn. She said, I'll go from here in this house to West Lawn Cemetery. Mark it. She was determined to spend the rest of her life making her own decisions. 2 months after my father died, she bought a new car and drove my grandmother, my sisters, and me to cousins in New York to see the World's Fair and then visit Washington, D.C. It was a bold step in 1964 for women to drive across half the country. And let me tell you, it was no picnic riding in a round trip of 1,800 miles with 4 constantly bickering females. Oh, did we all fight? But that was our family. We fought with vigor, but in the end it never came to anything because there was so much love and such a strong bond among us that it couldn't be broken. With my father's death, our financial picture had changed. Her friends encouraged her to date and remarry, but my mother had already decided that she had been there and done that. She later said, I had the best man for 19 years, and I'm not going to try to match that. And besides, I don't want anyone telling me how to raise my children. And that was that. She did date, but she told these would-be suitors up front that if they started thinking about matrimony, she wouldn't see them anymore. And indeed, that is what happened more than once, much to my disappointment. Some of these guys had a lot of money, but that didn't impress my mother, so I continued to worry. But my mother didn't worry, so 2 years after my dad died, she went back to teach 4th grade, full-time at Hibbert School. At some point, she was told by a teacher who mentored her career that it appeared that her greatest love and strength was teaching the kids who struggled with learning. Her mentor encouraged her to get her master's degree in the new field of learning disabilities, so that's what she did, in whatever you could call her spare time. It took her 6 years, and she eventually got her master's in her 50s and began the special ed program in her school. For the next almost 40 years, that's how she continued her career. She survived 7 principals, most of whom became her close friends. She served on the local school council from its inception for 20 years and volunteered at the local community center. At home, my mother was an interesting parent. She herself was a model of integrity, open-mindedness, generosity, and kindness. She had a love of the world and of life. She took her ailing mother-in-law and each of her parents into our home to live out their last months under her care. Doing anything else never entered her mind. It was just the natural thing to do. Family was everything. Our house was a gathering house for all occasions. She looked for any excuse to have a party or find a bed for an out-of-town visitor. Some of her friends thought she was too liberal with us, yet we always knew what she thought was the right choice, whether we did it or not, and we knew the right way to behave, and she made it clear. In the interest of keeping us close, she would find a way to live with the alternatives that we may have presented her with. Some relatives clucked about our household, but I guarantee you it was out of envy. We had the fun, interesting home, bursting with friends and family. In spite of her open mind, my mother was a traditionalist around holiday rituals, and her morals paralleled those of our religious beliefs. Everyone mattered. She could have written the human rights ordinances. She lived them before they were the law. My mother's love and support of me never wavered, even when I feared I had brought another disappointment to her as a gay man. Those who knew me know my default reaction is to feel guilty. My mother wouldn't allow it. She was determined to be a part of my life no matter the turns it took, and she never hesitated, never, to tell me how much she loved and respected me and how proud she was of me. She just didn't want me to be without a love like she had. Enter Steve, and she just stopped thinking about that. I know just how blessed I have been by this amazing woman who was my mother. She collected surrogate children. Everyone wanted her as a second mother, yet she always had time for each and every one, especially her children and then grandchildren. People sought out her advice, guidance, and company. You've already heard this. Her circle of friends never stopped expanding, and it involved all age groups. Even among her cousins, their children sought her out. One of the more recent examples was when at 85 she decided to take voice lessons. Soon she was embraced by members of the Chicago cabaret community. And I had the finest all-volunteer cast for the Shirley shows. In fact, I had to limit the number of volunteers just to keep the show at a reasonable length. Although my mother did not like change, she did like new experiences and new opportunities to see new places and meet new people. The arrival of professional success for her children coincided with our finding the magic formula to ease her air sickness. The combination led to the fabulous string of family trips we began to take, as Joey alluded to, the Super Six, or was it Farah? Europe, Central America, and eventually my mother and I spent a magnificent 2 weeks in Israel. The first night in Tel Aviv, there were two very handsome bartenders who became her good friends. In a pub in Ireland, she caught the eye of a young lad who saw her dancing, and he pulled her up on a table to dance a jig with him. Many of you know the story of her leading us on a zip-lining adventure in Costa Rica when she was 82 years old. The time had come when my sisters and I loved to spoil my mother like she hadn't been spoiled since my dad passed away. In 1966, I introduced her to a popular new martini called a Cosmopolitan. She took to it like a baby to mother's milk, and cocktail history was made. Bartenders and servers in Chicago and South Haven were added to her list of surrogate children. Of the many friends and family from whom I've heard since her passing, I brim with pride. So many people, men and women, tell me that my mother is a role model for them, that they want to live their lives as she did hers, without fear, embracing life, making each day a celebration, being the last off the dance floor, and always finding a bright side, even on the darkest days. I hear of her smile and charm, her lovely appearance, and always about her joy and warmth of spirit. My mother was my best audience. Whether I was making fun of my own foibles or hers, she laughed. In fact, I never knew anyone who could laugh at herself more than my mother, and I've learned that is a trait in anyone I favor. It's a beautiful ability to laugh at yourself. If you can't laugh at yourself, you are no Shirley. So now that the day I have feared for almost 56 years has arrived, will the result be catastrophic for me? Or just maybe not? Unlike my mother, I always tended to see the glass not half empty, but almost completely empty. As I waited for the coming storm and the other shoe to drop. For now, it's difficult to imagine a gathering as warm and lively, a party so fun, or just a quiet time in a lovely glow without my mother's participation. But eventually, I hope my mother's lessons in life will lead me to dust myself off and find the silver lining. I think that's the best way I or anyone can honor her life. Right now, there are so many people she has to greet in heaven who I know are welcoming her with open arms. The cosmos are flowing. The band has struck up Glenn Miller's In the Mood. My mom and dad are dancing together again, leading the angels in a swing dance. I love my mother, and I always will. And I love all of you for loving her and taking her in the way you did at all stages of her life. Thank you.
Alan gave me a list of people who are going to speak, and my name does not appear on this list. So I'm going to take advantage of that and be very, very brief. And I'm going to begin with a very favorite verse of mine in the Hallel. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasto. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. Now, you may think that that's an ironic beginning to a speech at a funeral service, but I would like for you to think twice about that. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov. We should be able to give thanks because of the mercies that we've discovered in life. What you have heard from all these predecessors of mine at this podium are people who have been blessed not only with kindness and vigor and direction and understanding and cooperation and raising hell, but you remembered it in a way that shows how deeply appreciative you are for this lady's presence in your life. And, you know, there are a lot of people who try hard and haven't been as successful. Try hard in spite of certain adversities and have not been so successful. Tried hard in different venues and have not been so successful. I believe I want to thank each one of you, and I want to really be brief because God's going to pull down the shade on us. First of all, Shirley was a great builder of sanctuaries, and you should appreciate it. South Haven for Shirley was not just a cottage by the beach. South Haven for Shirley was a magnet for family and friends and celebration and discovery and joy and laughter in spite of loss. Shirley built a sanctuary on Springfield Avenue in Skokie. Now, there aren't many sanctuaries in Skokie. And it remains in the eye of the beholder to understand why it's a sanctuary. Sanctuaries are magnets for people who understand spirituality. And Shirley was able to build that sanctuary on Springfield Avenue. And Shirley was able to build a sanctuary in a broom closet. That's not easy, okay? Why was this such a great sanctuary? Because she recognized human needs, and she recognized that she could respond to those needs and raise their spirits and help them succeed. And that's what a sanctuary celebrates. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his loving kindness exists forever. And when I say his loving kindness exists forever, when you're talking about a French girl or a strange waiter or whoever you're talking about, a scared child or a principal who doesn't know what the hell he's doing, you can understand that that place, that from that little broom closet emanated certain things that many, many people recognized, not only because they gave her a lobby in the school or a street sign on an avenue, but they recognized that it was hard really to give thanks, and they wanted to remember the emanations that came from this soul. And I don't think that I can say any more than pay tribute to Shirley, because I was with her on some of those very difficult occasions, okay? And I was with her in some of those glorious occasions. When I came over to the house last night, I could only think about the bris that we had for Ferris, okay? She was not in the background, but she wasn't the moil. She was just flitting around, making sure that everybody had a happy time and knew that this was a great, significant step forward for this granddaughter. If you see some of these stones, you can see Zadie, you can see Bubby. Okay, I want to tell you something personal. I lived with my Bubby and Zadie, and I know the blessing of having a Bubby and Zadie, okay? And I know the blessing of being spoiled by a Bubby and Zadie. And I know the blessings of being Jewish from a Bubby and Zadie. And I know the laughter and the love and the fighting and the interplay and just the embrace, warmth, and blessing that comes from a Bubby and Zadie. So we should appreciate this lady who was in our midst for so long and so beautifully and so vibrantly and so joyously, because we remember some of those bitter moments and we saw somebody rise superior to those trials. What does that mean for this moment? This is not a sad moment. It's a leave-taking moment, but not a sad moment, because she gives you, each of us, me too, the ability to rise superior to whatever our trials are, our disappointments are, to help us to dream and to laugh and rejoice and to turn simple things into precious memories. We should remember her for blessing. Tehi Nishmata Baruch. It's in that spirit that I ask you to rise. Almighty God and compassionate Father, in whose hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh, as we come to pay a fond farewell and re-energize our lives to follow her examples in good times and bad. We thank thee for all that was good and true in her life, for all that is sweet and inspiring in her disposition and memory. May we remember with fondness and affection. May we not forget the lessons she taught us by her own example, by the demands she placed on us, by her sense of vision and righteousness, by the joy she found in her faith, in her family, in every circle in which she dwelt and prevailed. May she ever be a blessing, and may her repose ever be peace. El mole rachamim shochein b'maromim, hamtzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, b'malot kadoshim utahorim, gezohar harakia masirim, et nishmat Tzipora Pepe bat Aharon Isser ve'Fege shehalcha le'olama. Ana balarachamim yastireha b'seter knafav le'olamim. V'yitzror b'tzror hachayim et nishmata. Adonai hu nachlata. V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava. V'nomar Amen. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering cover of thy wing, among the holy and the pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament, unto our beloved Shirley Shechtman, a beloved mother, a beloved daughter, a beloved grandmother, a beloved granddaughter, a beloved friend, a beloved wife, a beloved teacher, a beloved dancer, a beloved singer, a beloved everything. May her soul ever be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Be thou her possession, and may her repose be peace, as she joins her beloved Joseph and Felice Lewis and Alex Tint and Fanny Tint and Henry Kalsheim and Dvorah Kalsheim and all those who lie in this hallowed ground. May they ever be a memory and an inspiration from their goodness, and may God receive them in love and embrace their souls and add to the brightness of the firmament as we recite the Kaddish. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Yoma Divrach Hirutei, Yamlich Malchutei, B'chaye Chon V'yomei Chon, Uvchaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Kariv, V'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mavorach, Liolam Ulol Me'omaya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei de Kudisha, Richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'olma, v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu, v'yal kol Yisrael, v'nomar amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu, v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. To the departed whom we now remember, our loved ones who lie here enshrined, our loved ones who lie enshrined in our hearts and who guide our souls and our spirits and our beliefs and our longings and our efforts. May they be enshrined forever. May we remember them for blessing as we pray for their repose. May they find peace after a life of fulfillment, a life of effort so that others would find fulfillment as well. May Shirley ever be a blessing for each of us. V'nomar, Amen. Amen. David. I'm going to step aside there.
Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, the gentlemen from the cemetery are going to lower their casket into the grave. You place 3 measures of earth into the grave without handing the cup. We're going to use this cup, so don't hand it to person. Place it in the waste receptacle, and then you can get a new one. We're going to pass out gloves, so please put those on. When you're done with the gloves, you can just leave them at the corner of the tent, and we'll pick them up. Memorial contributions in her memory to the Simon Wiesenthal Center, or Stand With Us. That information is on the service folder for those of you who are here. And for the over 170 screens who are watching, all that information is on our website. So in just a moment, you can come forward and place earth into the grave. From the live streaming, we are going to turn off the volume, but we'll keep it going. We're going to bring it forward. You experienced life in those times, and you were just it was such an inspiration for you. You hear the stories of I like them now.
speak. What do I tell you about that blue coat?
That's right.
We're gonna pass out the gloves. Rabbi, are you going to be speaking more? Rabbi, are you going to be speaking more? I'll get you the microphone. Yes. thought it was just about the houses. You should make anything.
Three soups. Sit down, four upstairs. Monday nights when I go to lentil soup, vegetable soup, some brown soup, olive oil, fresh baked. But after I knew her, and guess what we did?
I would like everybody, Alan and Debbie, stay where you are, and everybody else is going to form an aisle, starting over here, where my coat is. Facing one another, yes. That's it.
Rabbi, do you want the shoe off?
Yes.
Where do you want it?
Right here. No, I don't see it.
Oh, okay, so some people on this side, here.
Hold on, okay. Okay, everybody, we're going to make an aisle where this is, okay? Everybody but Alan